Good thing they like being heard, because we don't pay them that much.
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
The first of the duo is never shy about letting you know where he stands.
Okay, hot take, but I like your confidence.
The other promises he'll grow on you with time.
It's like a new pair of underwear. At first it's constrictive, but after a while it becomes a part of you.
Together, they're bringing you the best in Oklahoma State sports talk and their opinions on sports topics from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
Patrick Wheeler.
Let's stomp these dudes.
And Zach Lancaster.
Everyone is stupid except me.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about. Sport.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work. Show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it. I ain't playing with you. I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster hanging out on this Thursday. Zach, I guess I should welcome you in and say how you feeling, man? Feeling any better from yesterday or today?
That would be a big fat no. I'm not doing awful. I woke up this morning and had a real stuffy head and really tired. As the day progresses, I'm feeling like more and more tired and just exhausted. But I am going to get tested tomorrow morning. I think it's just out of a overabundance of caution. I don't think it's COVID, but I mean, it would be the most 2020 thing if it was COVID.
Right.
So, because I've taken like super precaution ever since March, and it would be very ironic.
Yeah, no doubt. And hope you feel better pretty soon. Obviously, still toughing it out and doing the Afternoon Sports Drive, which is all we can ask for, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So we have a ton to get to here in this first hour. We're going to look at Oklahoma State. I know basketball-wise, they were supposed to originally have their practice streaming live today, but that is ending up not being the case. But we still have lots to look at them. I was diving into a couple of different previews about the Big 12 today, and it's strange because there's a lot of optimism about players on Oklahoma State, but not as much about the team as a whole. So we'll look into that. In hour number 2, we've got Ryan Black joining us around 4:25 from the Manhattan Mercury. He's going to talk to us about Kansas State, covers them over there in Manhattan, and tell us what's going on, obviously, with the team, how they're planning on attacking this Oklahoma State team coming in just a couple of days. Should be a fun one, no doubt. More to come from that game, too, here in the Afternoon Sports Drive. We got Thursday Night Football. The NFL Week 9 is about to kick off tonight. There was some doubt whether this game would actually be played because of COVID issues, but right now it looks like it's good to go. So we'll get you your picks on that and much more still to come. First of all, though, something that has been basically the Oklahoma State, story of the day, I would say, is that we have an official word that Boone Pickens is going to have his own statue out in front of his very own stadium, Zach.
Yeah, so they've built this platform, smack dab in the middle, in front of that west end zone, kind of like between parking spots, like in the middle of the sidewalk. And this thing is huge. I'm talking like it's like 4.5, 5 feet tall by 4.5, 5 feet wide. And that's been up for the last, 3-4 weeks. So this, I fully agree that Boone Pickens needs a stadium. I mean, he donates the first largest ever donation to an NCAA program way back in 2008, 2005, $165 million, which is just wild. I mean, it's just insane. And that's gone on to build the facility that we have now, and that really catapulted and was the catalyst. You get the Sherman Smith Center. You get, Sherman Smith was really good friends with Boone Pickens. He donates money to build the Sherman Smith. You get, Obrey, it really just kind of spurred off a lot of stuff. You get the Cowgirl soccer facility, Neil Patterson Stadium. You get the Michael and Ann Greenwood Tennis Center. I mean, I think it's safe to say without Boone Pickens donating that amount of money, or even half of that or a quarter of that, I'm fairly confident in saying that Oklahoma State athletics would not be where it is today.
Yeah, and over the years, given close to $600 million. I mean, it's just really unbelievable.
My God.
The amount of money that he's donated back to Oklahoma State. From what I've seen, there's been a lot of, at least social media wise, there's been a lot of, oh, that's great, yeah, that's awesome. But then the main backlash has been, what about Barry? I'm sure you've seen that too, but what about Barry Sanders is everything else that I've seen.
No, and that's fair. I think it's only fair that Boone gets the first statue, but I think that Barry needs to have a statue. Like, it needs to be really quick, that Barry gets a statue. I don't think you wait, another 2-3 years. Like they're unveiling this ahead of the Texas Tech game here.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of this month, and I think and I get the whole financial, the financial shortcomings and shortfalls of COVID and the shutdown over the last 9 months, but you've got to think that someone out there, they've earmarked a little bit of cash or someone can donate some money, because Barry needs a statue. Barry needs to be the first player to get a statue, and while Thurman Thomas was incredibly deserving of, and absolutely earned the right to get into the Hall of Honor up there on the west end zone of Boone Pickens, there's a lot of people that thought Barry Sanders should have been the first guy to get inducted.
Sure.
So Barry absolutely needs to get one, and I think it needs to be announced within the next 6 months.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. I mean, it's well past due, to be completely honest with you, and what he was able to do for not only Oklahoma State but just athletes as a whole in that position is just really incredible. So no doubt, and I have to think that would be coming down the pipe at some point. So I want to transition here and look at Oklahoma State basketball a bit, because I did, like I said, we planned on having the live stream here on the television, kind of watching it like Tom and I did when they did that the first time earlier this year, which was a lot of fun to watch. And it got me thinking, that you and I haven't had a chance to talk too much about it yet, looking into the season, because heck, they start in 20 days. I mean, it's going to be honest before you know it. And I, for one, am very excited to see this team play and to get college basketball rolling again. Now that we finally got a chance to get college football underway, and yeah, there's been some interruptions, but for the most part, and then certainly for Oklahoma State, I know they've had their interruptions, but we're still sitting here, with mostly a full season under the belt and everything, and not a ton of interruptions. So it's been great overall. And basketball, though, there's been a lot of talk of, okay, when are we going to start the season? Is there going to be any fans allowed indoors? Are they going to play just conference? All this talk. So I'm just glad that we're about to get it underway. With that being said, I think it's interesting to look at what's going to be Oklahoma State basketball's identity this year. Because a lot of people, you can take a lot of different angles and say, well, it's all got to center around Cade, even though I don't think that's necessarily the case. I've looked at a lot of expert opinions about this so far, and while Oklahoma State was chosen in the preseason Big 12 rankings to finish 7th, that is where actually most of the experts have also picked them too. And it's fair to say, you look at the Big 12 conference, it's fair to say I think that they are the best conference of college basketball this year. I think they're right up there with the Big 10 they end up having the best teams and the top ranked teams. Baylor is arguably the best team in the country. Kansas is obviously always going to be in the national conversation. You look at all these teams in the Big 12 and look and see like Texas Tech. I think West Virginia is going to knock on some doors here this year. But overall for Oklahoma State, something I was thinking about earlier too, Zach, when I think about Cade specifically, because a lot of people like to focus on the scoring ability, and that's absolutely, the easy thing to focus on, and I get it. But one thing about Cade that's so great is it's just really hard to slow him down. And if you watch any of his film, he's really good at controlling the pace of play. And when a point guard can control the pace of play, everything else kind of falls into place around him offensively. You don't get him out of his rhythm very often, and when that ends up being the case, it is like a well-oiled machine most of the time for the offense when they can follow that. So that's one of the main things I love about him. Your goal defensively coming in is going to get him as uncomfortable as possible, but it's such a fine line for defenders because you don't want to overplay a guy like Cade, but giving him an inch of space is basically a death sentence because we know he makes his bread and butter driving the basketball. So there's been a lot of talk too about what the one knock on Cade is, his shooting sometimes. There's been a weakness at times to spot up and perimeter shooting, and maybe that's where defenders are really going to try to force him to beat them is by taking bad shots and getting out of his rhythm. But I'm telling you, getting to the rack obviously is where he makes his living, but he is so good at controlling pace of play. And this kind of brings me into what I want to get your thoughts on Cade too, but overall from Oklahoma State, I could see them being a much quicker team this year, trying to score buckets in the open floor, get transition buckets. I think we see more of that as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. This, like Tom mentioned yesterday, this is a much different team than it was last year. You look at the backcourt, and there's no doubt that this is probably the most athletic backcourt that Oklahoma State has had in a while. You look at Isaac Likely coming back. If Likely doesn't miss that month and a half with mono last year, he goes on to be one of the better players in the country.
Yeah.
Probably enters this season all Big 12 honors, whether that's, first team or honorable mention or whatever. You need to get some experience with those sophomores. Avery Anderson is very athletic and talented, but, he's still got to learn the experience. Chris Harris, where is he going to be at coming off that knee injury? Keelan Boone, where is he going to be at? Caleb Boone, I think, is the biggest question. I think you look down at that front court, you look at Caleb Boone, what's there? It's going to be really interesting because Caleb is very athletic. He's very talented. We saw him come on late last season and really shine, but that was also with Yor and A. And it's easy for me to kind of forget about Yor because he's not here. But there's no doubt you lose a lot with Yor transferring out to SMU. You lose that 7-foot presence down low. He had that 7.5-foot wingspan. He can block any shot that comes his way. I think that fouls were an issue for him, and that's where we pick up with Caleb. I think fouls are going to be an issue. I think if you're, I think you hit it on the head. The Big 12 is easily the best team or the best conference in college basketball. You look at Baylor at the top; they've got a chance to run the table.
Yeah.
Kansas always has a chance to run the table. Same with Texas Tech. West Virginia is going to be sneaky dangerous this year. Same with Texas. And so if you're any of those coaches, you're looking at that perimeter and you're saying, okay, Isaac Likely, really dangerous. You're looking at Cade Cunningham, really dangerous. You're looking at Matthew Alexander Moncrief. We don't know what he's going to do, but everything looks to be really good with him. We need to see what those freshmen can do. But, what's that down low look like? Because you add experience on the outside, something that they desperately needed with losing Lindy Waters and Thomas Tazagua. They needed that outside shot because if you look at the players on the team, like you mentioned, Cade Cunningham, he's a do-it-all, all-around kind of basketball player, but maybe one of his weaknesses is that pressure from the outside, trying to get those outside shots off. So you add Farron Flavors Jr., you add a Bryce Williams, those two hot-handed guards. They've got a year, maybe two left, depending on if they want to take advantage of that eligibility. That's experience, and that's hot-handed from the outside. So I think it's fair that you see a lot of the preseason rankings 6, 7. I think that's pretty fair because you look at what's coming back, and there is a lot of athleticism. There is a lot of talent. We saw that in that first open practice. We see it with the players coming back. We saw what the players, what those high school players can do. There's no doubt there's going to be a jump from high school ball, whatever level you play at, to Division I playing in the Big 12. But those guys look like they should be able to make that transition at some point this season. When? I'm not sure. But Oklahoma State they look athletic enough, and they look like they have talent if they can figure it out to make some noise in the Big 12.
Well, you've seen players that come in really, highly touted, like a Cade Cunningham every single year, and sometimes when the amount of success that's expected doesn't quite come right away, if you look at one of the factors that tends to be pretty consistent among all that is the supporting cast. And it's kind of like you mentioned there. If guys like Isaac Likely, who I think he's going to have to really assume this role of being sort of a second fiddle, because at the same time, by him doing that, it allows a guy like Cade to open up his play. Because if Cade can be great, and we know that, but he can only be so good at times that if he doesn't have guys around him that are willing to make plays and open up the floor a bit for him and kind of assume that type of role, then it's not going to come as easy. So when everybody else is able to, then I'm not saying get out of the way. I'm saying actually make space for him, and in turn, they're going to get the ball more in that way too. So it's an opportunity where guys like Isaac Likely, I think Alexander Moncrief is going to be a big time factor before it's all said and done. Farron Flavors, like you said, and yeah, they need a guy. The Boone twins. You're asking. That's certainly the position you're asking for major help from this year, because as you said, Yor is looked upon as last year as that guy that's he's so good at disrupting shots, and he's so good at making guys make bad plays up in the air and in the middle of the paint, and it's something that you miss. These little things that don't necessarily hit the stat sheet is what you love out of a post player, and they need that again this year. So yeah, if they can mix all that, and that's why I think that you get the ranking that you get, as you mentioned there with 6 and 7, because there are still some questions. Now, they could come out and Oklahoma State could dominate, and I'm talking about even in Big 12 play. They could come out and just really start running things, and all of a sudden you're getting some heads turning, and I'm sure there's plenty of guys that pick them at that point that would be willing to be okay with being incorrect, because there is the ability for this team to kind of prove some people wrong. The question is, as besides everything we just talked about there, can you get it all to mesh early too? Because you only get Cade for one season, and you want to utilize him as much as possible. We know he's going to have a ton of volume because he's going to be handling the ball all the time, but you want to be able to use him and utilize him in the correct ways while you have him. So it's sort of a puzzle situation. You're kind of tiptoeing around things and see if you can get stuff in the right spot. And if that does happen early on, all I'm saying to the rest of the Big 12 and anyone that comes into Oklahoma State's path is watch out for that team.
Well, and that's, I think, what you're going to see. You look down low, and obviously Caleb Boone is going to be pivotal. He's that pivotal guy down low, standing at 6'9". I don't know how big of an impact Bernard Kuma is going to make this first year. This is a completely different level of basketball that he's used to playing. I lied. Montrell Pena, he's 6'10", but you look at Caleb Boone, he is your post player, and then kind of, out there a little bit, you got Cade Cunningham at 6'8" running your point. But I think you're going to see Boynton. I think you're going to see them run a lot of small ball. I think you're going to see a lot of guards on the floor at most of the time. I think you're going to see a lot of running and gunning and trying to cover up those discrepancies down low. I don't know how fast you're going to see the offense try to score, because I know that Boynton, you need to try to set up play if the defense is able to get back in transition. But I think you're going to try to see a lot of stuff happen before they cross over that timeline. And so it's going to be interesting. And I think when you look at the schedule, I think there is some challenges to this early schedule. Like I mentioned yesterday, you need to have that resume in order to impress the NCAA for the net rankings going into the postseason. But you look at UT Arlington, that's a team that is really, really going to help the Cowboys move forward. And then as we mentioned yesterday, and as Tom hit on, they're looking to try to find a home game with someone between the 26th and the 28th before they go up to Milwaukee to play Marquette. I don't think you're going to see him bringing in a Duke. I don't think you're going to see him bringing in a North Carolina, or even a really talented, like a mid-major, like a Western Kentucky. But then I don't think you're going to see him bring in like a UT Arlington, but you're going to see him bring someone that can help pad that schedule, because you look at Marquette, that's going to be a tricky game. Oakland's a good game for a young team. You look at Oral Roberts, that should be a relatively good game for Oklahoma State. And then you go up to Wichita State, and no one knows what Wichita State's going to look like. So that could either be really good for the Cowboys in terms of confidence, or it could potentially be a potential resume builder. You're looking at 6 games in if they add that other game.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. I was really hoping that we were going to get that stream today. We were able to learn so much about this team in that first stream. And, you go, what has it been, 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks? Really looking forward to seeing what Boynton and company have been able to accomplish in those 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's that stream, as you said, was really informative.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was. You could take a lot away from it, and there's certainly talent on this team. I mean, that is something that is forefront. There's a lot of talent on this team, and I'm not expecting I've said this a bunch, but I'm not expecting a lot of games where there's any type of scoring issues. There's going to be some guys that, that they're really good at putting the ball in the basket. The question, as we talked about there, is your post presence and your defense, and at the same time allowing guys like Likely, like Cade Cunningham, space to work and make things happen. We come back here on the afternoon sports drive. It's Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. And get us on Twitter. I'm at the Patty Wheels, and you can follow Zach at ZLancaster91. We come back here. I got some interesting topics out of OSU footballs. There's a couple of ways from K-State. There was a really good message, I thought, that Eamon Ogbongbemiga shared in his media availability, as well as another guy on the team, Josh Sills, had a lot to say about coming into this Kansas State game and off the Texas loss, because believe it or not, he's been there before. We'll talk about all that coming up next.
You can call till your voice is running out, but I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. I'm somewhere far away where you can't bring me down, so I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. Yeah, run it.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, and that's Zach Lancaster. And I don't know, Zach. It's like the captain's log, day 50. Still no president in the United States. I feel like that's where we are right now with everything.
Man, it's the craziest thing. Like, anytime I get I get that, traditionally we find out who the president is either that Tuesday night or, maybe very rarely into Wednesday morning. And so I think that's kind of spoiled us. But going into Thursday, we're nearing the end of Thursday, and it's like, oh, there's no end in sight. It's crazy, man. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you get word yesterday that North Carolina is not planning on getting full results until the 12th. I mean, it's just, yeah. So we're just sitting here in limbo, twiddling our thumbs around, waiting for who knows what. But the good news is sports continue on, and that's all we care about is that sports continue on.
That's the most important thing in society today.
It usually is, honestly. I mean, really, what's more important than sports? I'll answer that, nothing. And I think that obviously when you look at Oklahoma State football, okay, there's been plenty of people that have been down on this Texas loss, and I get it. I think the disappointment was because, as I, I've hit on with you a little bit, that there was just so much promise with this team, and it's not like they're completely out of it. We've detailed that too. They're not completely out of everything, but there's just, if ever there was a time to take control and dominate for Oklahoma State football in the Big 12, it was this year for the factors of, okay, well, Oklahoma is not playing all that well, and we have everybody back healthy, at least right now. Certainly our weapons. Now, the offensive line is a different story, but certainly our weapons, and the defense is playing at another level. All of that mixed in, it was time to strike. And they were they were so close, as we know. And, I think Josh Sills had a lot of good things to say about this, and we'll look at him in just a second. But as you know too, Zach, Eamon Ogbongbemiga gave a really good kind of a closing statement the other day. I think it was yesterday, right, when he was on with the media, and gave out his closing words here. And this was kind of his message to the fan base right now with everything going on with Oklahoma State football. So here's Eamon. Take a listen to what he had to say.
This is going to be a long ride. You got to stick with us through thick and thin. Obviously you don't want any losses. You don't want games like that. But, this team is tightly knit, and we're still going for something special, and it's not over yet. So just stick with us. Something special is coming, so just thug it out, because we're going to keep grinding for y'all.
Just thug it out, because they're going to keep on grinding.
One of the best phrases I've heard all year long.
I love that.
Just thug it out. I love it. Now, yeah, Eamon is one of the more well-spoken players on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you start getting into, sophomore, juniors, redshirt sophomores or juniors, that's when these guys start to get a little more comfortable with talking to the media. And that's with him being a senior, that's one of the better quotes I've heard, because, I was listening to Dion Amati talk after the game on Saturday, and he was like, when I was a player, if we lost a game, it was hard, because we're on the field, it's our result that led to that loss. We're the ones that hold our fate, our season's fate in our own hands. And if something bad happens, it sucks. But by Monday or Tuesday, we were like, we were on to the next game. The coaches were like, hey, you got to focus on Texas. You got to focus on Oklahoma. You got to do this. You got to do that. We're like, all right, coach, let's do it. Let's go. That's the mindset I want Oklahoma State to have. I get how some fans are like, well, I don't want them to move on. I don't want them to get past that loss. I want them to use that loss for anger. They are. If you're Oklahoma State, you can't constantly dwell on that Texas loss. Now you take the bad stuff that happened, you take the turnovers, you take the running in the roughing the kicker, you take that 100-yard kickoff return, you take all those mistakes and you channel them, you focus on those and trying to get those right and trying to move on to Kansas State so you don't make those mistakes again. But I don't want Oklahoma State focusing on that. I want them focusing on that next game. You look at this is what Amon had to say just before that. He said games like that always sting and they hurt because in college you can't really lose if you want to make it all the way. You just got to come back to work because we've still got something to play for. We've still got goals to achieve, and you just got to watch the tape and move forward. There was a lot of things that we did well as a team, but there was a lot of things that we got to work on. So we've got to clean those things up and move on to the next opponent, and don't let a loss beat you twice. If all they do is they dwell on Texas all week long, hey, we did this wrong, we did this wrong, we did this wrong, they're going to go into Manhattan and they're going to get beat. I'm not saying that Kansas State would just beat the brakes off of them, but Kansas State would beat Oklahoma State. They're a good enough ball team. They're not great, but Kansas State is good enough. They're well coached that if Oklahoma State allows themselves to dwell on the mistakes, then they're going to go up there and get beat. And Amon said, we did a lot of good things. They held Texas, a very athletic Texas team, to under 300 yards offense. They put up over 500 yards for just the second time this season. Spencer Sanders threw for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns? I mean, what Oklahoma State did on Saturday was really, really good. It's just unfortunate that a few mistakes overshadowed the good. And so I want Oklahoma State focusing on the good things. I'm excited for what this team can do on Saturday.
Yeah, and that's a testament of the leadership, as you said, on that team, as well as the coaching staff. I think the mindset is built into it's on to the next, and it really has to be. And yeah, what Amon said is pretty interesting about, and he's right about the, in college football, you lose once and that can be it. And the players aren't immune to realizing that either. We always hit on that. You come into it and it's tough sometimes to, you look at the college football playoff, you're never going to get in with more than one loss anyway. So the ultimate goal is obviously tough to achieve when that does happen. But yeah, he's looking at it from a really good standpoint, and he made another great point talking about that they don't need this to be ending up being 2 losses that come from this. And that's true, because Kansas State could ultimately come into it as with the mindset of this is a trap game. They come into it and take advantage of an Oklahoma State team that can't get past the Texas loss. But that's obviously something that has to be avoided at all costs. The good news for the Cowboys is that what they did on Saturday, because first of all, yes, the defense, and like Amon's talking about, they did a lot of really good things. They were put in a lot of really, really tough positions to stop an offense with shorter fields, and a Texas offense like that is going to take advantage. It doesn't matter who's on defense. That's going to be tough to stop any time. So, but the mistakes that happened, the good news for Oklahoma State is that they are fixable. And you look at, we've detailed the turnovers. Obviously, the kick return is something that's extremely fixable. Now I'm with kind of what Gundy was talking about. That look, there's a couple of guys that were out of position, and unfortunately, that shouldn't be happening at this point in the season. So they're going in, they're going to fix that. They look at what Spencer does, and they work on him throwing the football and reading defenders better, reading defenses quicker, and knowing when the pocket is closing in, knowing when that clock needs to go off in his head. Those are things that can be fixed. And I trust enough in the Oklahoma State coaching staff that they are going over that over and over this week to make sure that this doesn't happen. Because the message to the team is, guys, look, we came in here and we let them get away with beating us. Because if I was the Oklahoma State coaching staff, I would say to my guys, because they should already know this, look, we were the best team on the field that day. I mean, Texas came in, and I don't think the confidence was all that high, to be completely honest with you. They had some bounces go their way, and when they took advantage of turnovers, and they're not coming in ever expecting in the same game to come in and then get a kickoff return for a touchdown, and then on top of it, a attempted block punt that turns into a huge game-changing penalty, and then, of course, at the end, a ghost pass interference call. They don't expect any of that to happen. They came in fully expecting to have a very tough day moving the football against an Oklahoma State defense. Things went their way, and on the other side, there were times where Oklahoma State didn't play good enough. So if I'm the coaching staff for the Cowboys, I'm saying, look, we let them come in our place and beat us. Now, we got to go out and handle our business. It starts with fixing these mistakes that are 100% fixable. Let's get out there. Let's get that done. And let's go in there and dominate a football game, because against Kansas State, that's certainly something that Oklahoma State can do. And they can do it hard, and they can do it early. You know, honestly, if you look at this matchup, Kansas State could get blown out of the water here if Oklahoma State plays like they have at some time. And look, if Spencer Sanders goes out there and throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns and even just has 1 turnover against Kansas State, that game will not be close. So there are a lot of little things you can pick apart here and say, look, we need to shift focus pretty quickly. But you're just thankful that you have guys like Amon that are on the team. That's almost served to me as a coach on the field. And when you're a linebacker, you have to do that, really. I don't care what your age, you know, if you're a senior or a freshman, if you're a linebacker and you're a starting linebacker on any team, your job is to be a coach on the field as well as being a player. And he does that really well. But I also thought, too, that what Josh Sills had to say was great. I mean, because he's been there with West Virginia from the 2018 season when he talked about it, and they were a top 10 ranked team in the country, and they come into Stillwater and Oklahoma State, knocks them off. So he's been there, and he's been there, ironically, with Oklahoma State. But I thought this quote was awesome here, Zach. He said, quote, "Everybody hung their heads and couldn't get over it. We went on to lose the next 3 games after that. If you dwell on that loss, then that's what can happen. You have to put it behind you and forget about it. We have a brand new week, a brand new opportunity to go 1-0. And that's the biggest goal of all the leaders on this team have made a point of this week," unquote. That's exactly right. I mean, that has to be the mindset going in, is that he can say, look, it's proof in the pudding. I was there, and we lost 3 straight games after that. Because think about it this way, Zach. If Oklahoma State came in and they lose this game to Texas, that's one thing. But can you imagine if they were to somehow drop the next 3, for instance? I mean, we'd have people, you know, shouting from the rooftops, oh my gosh, how can this team do that? And it would just be a complete meltdown. So that's something that Josh Sills is getting to his guys, saying, look, I've been there and we got to avoid it.
I don't, honestly, the way that people responded to the Texas loss, I don't even think it would take 3 straight losses after the Texas loss.
Yeah, you're right.
I think if they go up to Manhattan on Saturday and they get beat, then you'll have fans calling for Gundy's job. You'll have people standing outside Gallagher-Iba, standing out there, you know, standing outside the administration offices there out in Gallagher-Iba calling for Gundy's job. I think Josh Sills is the perfect person to try to help get this team through this. Now, we've learned throughout the season, you've got a lot of experience on the back end of that defense. You got a lot of experience on offense. We learned in the 2nd or 3rd Our Time episode that Josh Sills came in as a leader. There aren't too many first-year players, no matter what grade they're in, that they can take over as one of those offensive leaders. But I remember that 2018 game. You know, West Virginia came in as I think the number 7 ranked team in the country. Will Grier was on a Heisman campaign, and if they hadn't lost that game and they kept playing the way they were, he's in that conversation. I think he's in New York. West Virginia was one of the best teams in the country, and they came in and got embarrassed by Oklahoma State, and that was the start of 4 straight losses. Oklahoma State absolutely has to lean on Josh Sills. They got to lean on Ogbonnigbemiga. You got to look at Colby Harvell-Peel, Chuba, Tylen. You know, you got to look at these seniors, and you can't let it affect you, because if they go up to Manhattan, that's not a good loss, or that's a bad loss.
Yeah.
If you lose to Kansas State.
Yeah, and I'm with you in the sense that it's impressive to me that Josh Sills, and you talked about it there early, we saw has captured the locker room like he has. You know, he's really stepped up in a big time role where Oklahoma State could use all the leadership that is there, especially with the offensive line the way that it is. You know, a guy stepping up in that position, that's big time. And what he said is absolutely spot on. He's been there, he's seen it happen, and he wants this team to avoid a collapse, which is certainly something that they have to focus on, no doubt, coming into this game against Kansas State. When we come back here, Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Get us on Twitter. I'm at the Patty Wheels. You can find Zach at ZLancaster91. When we come back, we'll look ahead Thursday Night Football. We got Week 9 coming up here tonight. Game is on between the Packers and the 49ers. We'll give you a prediction and some gambling advice, too, if you want to put some money down on this game. In hour number 2, don't forget Ryan Black, K-State beat writer for Manhattan Mercury, is going to join us at 4:25. We'll get more in-depth analysis from him about Kansas State and OSU. All still to come on the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Whoa. Staring as I go, I gave until my soul hurt, never told them so. They're watching as I fall, somewhere down below. Maybe I'm just falling to get somewhere they were.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Zach Lancaster getting ready to wrap up this first hour. Thursday Night Football, just a little bit, a few hours away. Packers and 49ers. And looking down the list of Thursday Night Football games before the season started, this was one you circled, it'd be a good game, NFC Championship rematch. And on Thursday night, there's usually not a lot of great NFL games on Thursday night, but this was going to be a good one. And while I think it still will be for one team, the Packers, the 49ers have ran into so many injury issues, it's not even funny this year. But there's a ton of storylines from both these teams. I mean, obviously coming in, one of the most interesting storylines from the draft was when the Packers decided, well, we're just going to trade up and we're going to grab Jordan Love and we're not going to get any type of weapon for Aaron Rodgers. He's good with what he's got out there. And everyone was like, okay, doesn't really make sense. What's funny, Zach, is that all these guys that talk sports have been able to formulate their new hot takes on this. And the most popular one about that is, oh, it was actually a really good move. Now that I've looked back on it, it made sense for them to grab Jordan Love. I'm like, okay, let's stop kind of going a far-fetch here and let's look at it what it was. And to me, it was a kind of a middle finger to Aaron Rodgers because they know he was eventually on his way out. What he did this year, though, was come back and just ball out. And that wasn't a huge surprise to me. I mean, he had a huge chip on his shoulder, and we know Aaron Rodgers' personality. He's fine with that. I mean, it's natural to him. So, and Mad Aaron Rodgers is a really successful Aaron Rodgers. So I think that's where we are with him this year, and the Packers, who have had their share of injuries as well. But they have Devontae Adams back. The issue is, as I said, with this 49ers team, not just the defensive injuries, but, you lose a guy like Nick Bosa, that's going to be devastating. But the injuries to George Kittle, who's your top pass catcher, now he may not return this year. Jimmy Garoppolo is officially out. This is going to be a Nick Mullins start here for the 49ers. Yeah, Nick Mullins, right? That's kind of, I think the Cowboys, though, they'd still be okay with having him at this point. But he's coming in tonight, so that's going to be interesting too. And the other part is if it couldn't get a little bit worse for the Niners, how about the fact that basically their entire wide receiver core is on the COVID-19 reserve list. They had Brandon Ayuk test positive, or Kendall Bourne, I should say, test positive, and Brandon Ayuk and all the other receivers they had left had to be out for this game because of contact tracing. So no one even knows who the 49ers are going to throw to tonight with Nick Mullins. I think, Zach, this is just shaping up to be a disaster game for San Francisco.
No, absolutely. Which is why I'm honestly surprised that Green Bay is still just 7-point favorites.
I kind of am too.
I really expected that to move.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not 14 points, but I expected it to be 9, 10, 11 points, not 7, especially going into the game tonight.
Yeah, no, I expected it to move up a little bit. I think 10 would definitely I'd still be okay with that. I mean, this is just, you take all those factors into account. And I think it actually kind of lays it out pretty interesting because last year, the 49ers, we know they really did benefit from somewhat of a soft schedule, but they were one of those teams that their running game was actually so good. They were able to run teams over and then constantly get the ball back because their defense never let anybody score on them. That mixed in, and they were able to kind of hide Jimmy Garoppolo behind all of that because let's be honest, he's just not that great of a quarterback. And people look and say, well, I made the Super Bowl last year, but look at what he did. He really didn't have to do all that much. There were times he made big throws, but you saw in the Super Bowl, he had a chance there to basically win it, and it was an easy throw, and he overthrows his receiver, Emmanuel Sanders, and that could have been it, and he just missed him. So that's something you can't have from a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. They were able to hide Jimmy G. Now, this year, they don't even have to because he can't even play anymore with this ankle and everything else he's got going on. They're just completely just ruined on that team with injuries. I think it's more than a Super Bowl hangover. It's everything that can go wrong for San Francisco has gone wrong. On the other end, as we talked about, though, with the Packers, I just think it's crazy because I mentioned to you guys, I think to you earlier this week, one of my takeaways from the NFL was they have arguably a top 3 quarterback on the team still with Aaron Rodgers, and Davante Adams, he's the best receiver in the league to me. I mean, this dude, and I think, again, it just shows how much talent and how much skill Aaron Rodgers brings to that position because he's got one really, really solid weapon in Davante Adams, and he continues to find him open in the field, finds him for touchdowns too. A lot of times you see star receivers that are really good and they'll make a lot of catches, but they won't score a lot of touchdowns. Nah, Davante Adams is both. And there's really not a bunch of other weapons that are at use for Aaron Rodgers right now. All the running backs are hurt, and he's still got his team in a really prime position. They put up a lot of points this year. I know they ran into a buzzsaw with the Bucs, but since then, I mean, this has just been vintage Aaron Rodgers to me here again.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this year plays out. They're setting at 5-2, I believe.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, 36 years old. He's not. If you look at his stats, he's not. He's not blowing anybody out of the water. He's setting it, I think, just under 1,900 yards on the season, which is still really, really good. But the biggest thing going for Aaron Rodgers is the fact that he has weapons around him. I think that you look at Green Bay this year, and in terms of Aaron Rodgers, this is almost kind of like a last-ditch effort. I don't know how much Rodgers still has left in the tank beyond this year. And I think you hit on it perfect. I think it's kind of a perfect situation for Aaron because, they bring in a quarterback. They bring in Jordan Love. And so it kind of is like listen, I think you're still our guy, but we needed to bring in some fresh blood because I don't know how much more you've got going. And there's no doubt that Aaron Rodgers uses that adversity, any adversity thrown his way to try to go out there and make some noise. And I think that's what you're going to see the rest of the season. I really don't think San Francisco has any chance.
No.
Really. I mean, even if Aaron Rodgers didn't play tonight, I don't know how much chance they have.
Well, I mean, it's just, and I've got people call me crazy, when I brought up the idea that was there some intent possibly behind what the Packers did with Jordan Love to almost fire up a little bit. I mean, they kind of got a 2 birds, 1 stone situation. It was, well, we were able to fire up Aaron Rodgers at the same time we possibly got our QB of the future because he can develop under a guy like Aaron Rodgers. So I think that had something to do with part of what they did. I mean, it's just too strange of a move to make to not kind of assume maybe something like that happened. But Aaron Rodgers, yeah, like you said, the numbers aren't league leading by any means, but man, they're still really good. And he is just proving that he's kind of got that ageless thing going on, a little bit like Tom Brady over there. I think they're a super competitive team in the NFC, especially with the Niners out of the way. It does help. So they're going to have a real shot. The problem is defensively. I think they still need a few pieces on that defensive side to stop teams because we saw what the Bucs did. Tom Brady came in and was really just picking apart that Green Bay defense. So I was hoping for a couple of moves for him before the deadline. That wasn't the case. So they're going to have to live with that, but Aaron Rodgers, I think, is good enough to get him out of the gutter. With that being said, let's get our picks in here for this Thursday night. Levi already proxied in his pick for me, and that was, of course, the Packers all the way. I'm also going Green Bay. I know people are like, oh, they lost to the Minnesota Vikings last week, and Minnesota was terrible. Oh, well, Minnesota has been terrible, but they got Dalvin Cook back, and my goodness, he was like football god last week, scoring 4 touchdowns, which is unheard of for that running back position. So put that aside. They come into a team with the 49ers, and I think there's no question they get the win. As far as gambling, like you said, it's a 7.5-point spread right now for Green Bay. I think that's an easy cover, honestly. I mean, I can see them winning by 3 touchdowns. The total is at 48 right now, and I'm going to say that under actually hits because I'm looking at more of a 35-3 type game here. I think that I don't know how the Niners are going to move the ball. I really don't. I mean, they don't even know what's going on with their running game right now, and that's been their bread and butter. Nick Mullins is not good enough. I just see this being an absolute blowout tonight.
That's interesting. I was actually thinking 35 as well, but I was thinking more along the lines of like 35-14.
Okay.
I think that San Francisco still somehow finds a way to score, whether that's late in the ball game or whether they catch Green Bay off. So I'm going 35-14 Green Bay. So obviously over on the 48.5.
There you go. There's your Thursday Night Football preview, and should be a good one just for the fact that the Packers, you get to see Aaron Rodgers in primetime, which is always a fun thing if you're a football fan. When we come back in hour number 2, we're going to get into some of our buy or sell. At 4:25, don't forget we got Ryan Clark joining us from the Manhattan Mercury, covers K-State, and he'll break all of that down with what they expect out of the Kansas State Wildcats and Oklahoma State Cowboys coming up Saturday.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my best, we'll begin with a 1 or a 2. Been a hell of a ride, but I'm thinking it's time to grow.
Metronome.
Man, I'm up to something. Ooh-dee-la-dee-do, thank you all for coming. I hope you like the show, cause it's on a budget. So ooh-dee-la-dee-do, yeah. Come on, here we go, yeah. Come on.
Here we go.
So put your best face on.
It's hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, and that's Zach Lancaster. Zach, I've got one remedy for how you can feel better, okay? You ready for this? Just a little bit of advice to make you feel better.
Yeah.
Simply 3 words. Just thug it out. Thug it out.
I've been trying to do that all day. I've taken more medicine today than I have probably in the last 2 years combined. And I have my fallback. My fallback plan is 3 little shooter bottles of Crown Black in the kitchen.
Yes.
That as soon as the radio show is over, I'm going to pour some honey into. So I figured Bill Coleman would appreciate me waiting to drink liquor before the show was over.
Yes. Yeah, I think he would. And, I really do too, but I wouldn't. I mean, if you came on here and were giving just some wild takes, I think it'd be good radio, but I would still be like, what's going on with Zach over there?
Like if I pick San Francisco to be.
Yeah. If you were like, well, the Niners are going to come on and actually they're going to win by 21, and Nick Mullins is going to throw 5 touchdowns. Yeah, that would be. Or if you came on and said, hey, hot take for the day, Cooper Rush is going to go crazy against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, I would just have you probably committed or something like that. So
Cooper Rush is going to be lucky if he can throw for 100 yards on.
I just don't get it. I mean, I feel like this has to be. It's literally like throwing fresh fish out there to the sharks. It's just like we are. Here you go. It's like sacrifice. Here you go. We're just sacrificing Cooper Rush to the Steelers defense. It's one thing. I'm not being dramatic either, because there are defenses in the league where it's like, it's still exploitable. No, not the Steelers. And they're not just – Steelers are just like they used to be when they were known, like when James Harrison was still there and Troy Polamalu and all them. It was – and Ryan Shazier, they were gritty and dirty and got in your face and blew everything up and didn't mind putting you on the ground. It's going to be one of those. So I'm certainly worried for Cooper Rush and his health in this one, no doubt. So to kick off here the hour, don't forget, 20 minutes. We got under 20 minutes now. Ryan Clark's going to join us from the Manhattan Mercury. Got that wrong. Manhattan Mercury. You heard of that paper before up there, Zach?
I have. Yeah.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
I have heard of that paper.
Okay,
it's a good paper. I've read some of Ryan's work.
Yeah, no, he's actually
it's the local tabloid.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and he's actually He's really
They
good.
run articles about Bat Boy and
yeah, that's exactly right. No, he's great at what he does covering K-State. So we'll get into him in just a little bit. But first, we're going to kick off the second hour with this.
Are you buying?
I'd buy that for $1.
Or are you selling?
You pick up the phone and you sell.
This is Buy or Sell on the afternoon sports drive.
Make money, make money.
Buy or Sell afternoon sports drive. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Zach, I will start first if you don't mind. I will take over and go first here in this one. Buy or sell that Spencer Sanders scores over 3 total touchdowns against Kansas State. Just total, not just passing, but 3 total touchdowns. He's going over that. Buy or sell?
Yeah, I'm buying. I think that this offense is good enough. I think that Spencer is good enough. The Texas game was bad, but you take away the 2 fumbles. I can live with an interception, but you take away the 2 fumbles, Oklahoma State wins that game easily, and Spencer Sanders has the best game of his career. And we're not wondering, well, I mean, look at how many turnovers he's had in the last 2 seasons. It's, man, Spencer Sanders came back, and this is his second game and that he's played in over a year, and he is looking really, really good. So I'm going over. I'm going to go. I'll even take it further, and I'll say he gets 5.
5 total touchdowns. Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking 3 through the air, and he picks up 2 on the ground. I'm going over ambitious. Ooh. And if I'm wrong, then this is a fever dream because I'm not feeling well.
Yeah, that's what we'll blame it on.
Mm-hmm.
I also am going to buy. I'm not going to go as far as 5. I'm going to go 4 because I think he throws 3 and does run 1 in this ball game. I can't talk enough about just how crisp the touchdown throws really were. I mean, they were those looked like pro throws, and that was good to see. Especially, I mean, he started off, and that's kind of where I have to admit, starting off against Texas, they get down the field and he throws a bullet, squeezes it in there to Tylan Wallace on the slant route to start everything off for the score, and I'm thinking, oh man, if it's going to be like this, we might be running away with this before it's all said and done. But obviously things change. However, the touchdown passes were really, really good. The best I've seen from him in a while. Throwing the football in the red zone too, for the most part. And I think we don't give enough credit really to the fact that he was able to get the offense down in that short amount of time in field goal range. That's something that I think a lot of people have talked about because it goes forgotten. But the fact that Spencer was able to get a drive set up really quickly and to get a chance. I know that a lot of people focus, he took the sack there, and then it's true, you can't do that. But he did, get them at least enough time left on the clock and in position to allow Alex Hale to kick that field goal and get him going. So it goes underrated a little bit on my part. And
absolutely. So my first one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
go ahead.
Nope. I was just going to say my first one. You look at, we'd already talked about it. We closed out the hour. But Green Bay, they have scored more than 30 points in every game this season except for last week against Minnesota. Minnesota scores more than 30 points against San Francisco tonight by yourself? And I already know your answer, but expound on it a little bit more.
Well, I will because, they had that tough game against the Vikings, and then obviously I think the Bucs too, they only managed 10 points if I remember correctly. But that being said, as you talked about, it's been a 30-plus point effort the rest of the way. And that's being led by Aaron Rodgers because he's able to make an offense that if you look on paper, you circle Aaron Rodgers, you circle Aaron Jones, and you circle Devontae Adams and say, okay, those 3 really good players, but is it enough to put up a lot of points? But I'd say circle Aaron Rodgers 3 times because it is plenty to put up a lot of points, and he's shown that. He came in this year with a lot of spare parts at wide receiver. I mean, let's be honest, that's what they were. I think they were trying to push that Allen Lazard was going to be a true number 2, and I've never really bought that. They were trying to push that Marquez Valdez-Scantling was going to be your number 2, and not all the case there either. But he's able to really utilize throwing the ball to the backside of the backfield. Aaron Jones is a great receiving back. Jamal Williams is a great receiving back, and when they went to the draft and grabbed A.J. Dillon, who I'm just like, okay, again, didn't really make sense. You grabbed a quarterback and another running back, but no wide receiver. They've been able to utilize him quite a bit as well. So yeah, I'm going over it. I said 35, and I wouldn't be surprised if they put up 40 plus against a team like San Francisco that is just so decimated on every single aspect of the football. They're gonna have a hard time. They're, like I said, they're gonna be chasing points, but this Packers defense isn't great, but they're going to be looking really good against the San Francisco team. So, yeah, give me over 30 points, and I think it's a trend we see continue a lot the rest of the season simply because I talked about there with that Packers defense. They're not doing the offense any favors, but luckily that offense is explosive enough to be able to keep up in a shootout.
Absolutely agree. I'm buying it as well.
Yeah, I think it would be crazy if they didn't, really. For sure. So I'm sticking with the NFL here for you, my second one. Odell Beckham Jr. turns 28 today. He's 28 years old, and I'm going to give you my buy or sell in a second, but I want to tell you, like, here's the thing. I talked about it yesterday with Lamar Jackson. You know, there's guys that the sports media just always has to push their agenda on these guys that, you know, get some backlash from people like, why are you acting like he's all that great? And why are you constantly posting about him and all this stuff? This is one of those guys. OBJ has always been one of those guys, and I think he's really talented. But to be honest with you, Zach, the catch that he made, we all know, I think it was the worst thing that ever happened to him. And I say that because since then, everything has just completely gone to his head. I mean, completely gone to his head. Remember he partied on the yacht before the playoff game with the Giants, and that picture was exposed with him and all the wide receivers. And then what do you know? The next day he comes in hungover and who knows what else, and is just lays a dud in the playoff game. He fought the kicking net. Of course, that was always a fun one. He fought Josh Norman that one time. I think it was last year we got that Paris hotel room video where he's smoking a blunt on video and the girl next to him is snorting coke. And then he's partying with Iggy Azalea instead of being at OTAs. You go down a list of things. He's done as much off the field as on it, really. But he's another one of those guys at ESPN and Bleacher Report, and they're like, oh, you know, the stats today, they showed that post. Well, 28 years old, and look what OBJ's done in the league. This dude is truly dynamic. It's like, chill. And he's never going to get it done with Baker Mayfield. I'm sorry, he's just not. Baker is not consistent enough, and neither is OBJ. So with all that being said, the buy or sell question for you is, because we talked about there with the Giants, he did end up in one playoff game, albeit got beat. The buy or sell question is, does he ever make another playoff game? Do you buy or sell that OBJ in his career will ever make another playoff game?
Yeah, I'll buy it, just because so many teams make the playoffs every single year. I'm not saying that he's going to go out and he's going to be dynamic, you know, and he's going to record 200 receiving yards and he's going to win a Super Bowl, or he's going to win a Super Bowl MVP or this or that. But I would find it hard, unless he just retires, you know, unless he quits, or this injury that he suffered, he can't come back for it and has to, you know, but I would find it hard to believe that with how many teams make the playoffs, whether that's wild card or regular, you know, division, I would find it hard that he doesn't make at least make the playoffs.
Okay.
I'm not saying he's going to do anything great, but yeah, I think he makes the playoffs.
The only reason I'm going to buy it is because I think it will happen, but it won't be with the Cleveland Browns.
No, it can't be.
Yeah, and because everybody looked at their record, you know, coming into it this season, and at times like, they're about to turn the corner, and we find out, no, that's not the case, because it's literally a cycle with Baker Mayfield, and now, of course, OBJ is out for the season anyways, but there's going to be a time at some point in Odell Beckham's career where a team is going to really need a wide receiver. For instance, like the Packers we were talking about, they could use another wide receiver. There's going to be a team that will get him on the low, on the cheap. You know, the Browns will ship him off because he'll have done enough at that point to make them mad enough where they'll take anything to get rid of him, like an Antonio Brown situation. And, you know, so they ship him off, and he's going to end up being on a contender. I don't think he'll make a huge difference on said contender, but he will be in a spot where he will be in a playoff game, and I'm like you. I don't see him, you know, being the reason that they continue in the playoffs, but the fact that they have expanded in the NFL, yes, certainly gives him a better shot. So I'm going to buy it, but only when he's on a different team besides the Cleveland Browns.
Absolutely, yeah. There's definitely stipulations. It's not going to be Cleveland. You know, he's not going to be the reason a team is a contender. He's going to get it'll be like a Des Bryant situation.
Mm-hmm.
He gets picked up midway, maybe late in the season, in his mid-30s, and somehow sneaks in and maybe makes a division championship or something like that. But yeah, I don't think he's not going to be great. Next buy or sell, Amen Ogbongbemiga records 10-plus tackles against Kansas State. Buy or sell?
Yeah, I'm going to buy it. I know that's a fairly high number, but it's certainly achievable for Amen, especially in this game, because Kansas State, they've had their issues on both sides of the ball, and especially offensively. I mean, I'm sorry, but with Skylar Thompson not at the helm, things just are not running as smooth, and that obviously entails the offensive line play too. So I think he's going to get in the backfield even a couple of times. But we talked about it too with the running back situation in Kansas State. Deuce Vaughn has underachieved. And I think that's the case here against this Oklahoma State defense. And it really all starts with Amen plugging up the hole. And his mindset really is like we played his audio earlier in the first hour. And I just think he's on the right path right now to succeed. And, you get him and Malcolm Rodriguez getting out there and kind of leading the way, because we don't know Colby's status for this one. For instance, there were some players dinged up a bit on the defensive side. So they're going to have to lead even more so in this ball game. And that to me is going to trickle down into the performance he puts on the field. I think that his tackles too, I'll give you this, not just 10 plus total tackles, but they're going to be really meaningful tackles. He's not going to be chasing guys down. He's going to be stopping Deuce Vaughn at the line of scrimmage. He's going to be cutting off the edge, and he's going to get after their quarterback for sure. I think multiple times in this ball game is the pressure that Amen is going to lead with this defense is going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, Will Howard, I'm buying it as well. The Kansas State quarterback Will Howard, subbing in for Skylar Thompson. Obviously, Kansas State is going to be a run-first offense.
Yeah.
I think they were going to be a run-first offense anyway, even with Skylar Thompson. But this Kansas State offense is not the Kansas State offense that beat OU earlier this year. They are averaging 31 points a game, but they're only averaging 116 on the ground and under 230 through the air. And you look at what Amen has done so far this year. He's only totaled 10 tackles twice. He put up 13, a season high 13 against West Virginia, and he put up 10 last week against Texas. Struggled against Iowa State, recorded 3. Struggled against Kansas, recorded 5. Struggled against Tulsa, recorded 4. I think this is going to be a big, big game for Amen. I think this entire team is going to be hungry. I think this entire team is going to be chomping at the bit to try to get over that Texas loss and to prove that they are still a really good football team. And I think Amen goes out and puts up at least 12 tackles.
Yeah, I'm with you too. Think about it too with guys like Trace and Calvin and Cam, that are making plays up front and also funneling the running back towards the middle, or even Will Howard towards the middle of the field a bit, and that's where Amen makes his living. So he's going to have a good game. I'm with you on that, no doubt. Last one for you here from me. Antonio Brown's been one of the bigger stories again here lately, getting back into the NFL. And I heard some audio actually from him yesterday. He was talking with the media a little bit, and I was just waiting for him to say something that was, big time, like going to be the story of the day. Oh my gosh, he already said this, but I got to tell you, it sounded professional. It sounded like old AB when he wasn't constantly saying crazy things. He talked about how Tom Brady and even Tony Robbins, the speaker, the motivational speaker, Tony Robbins, Tom Brady has hooked him up with him, and they've really helped him out with his auras and, keeping things in perspective and all that good stuff. And he said he hopes he can contribute. And my solution for the Bucs is what you do when you bring him in here is you tell him, hey, 0 social media. Do not get on social media, and we're going to limit your media appearances. You basically tell him to go out there and be a top wide receiver with Tom Brady in a competitive Super Bowl caliber type team like the Bucs, and shut up. I think that's the message you have to give him. So my question on the buy or sell for you is, will Antonio Brown make it the rest of the season, or will there be, something that pops up that either he says or a legal issue or, another accusation or what, but will he make it with the Bucs the rest of the season?
I have a question for you.
Yep.
How many games are left in this regular season.
We are in week 9, so we have 8 more games.
So eight more regular season games.
Yes, regular season.
What do you think the Bucks can do postseason? How many games do you think they play postseason?
I mean, man, the way that they played these. Well, I say that they come in. What got me was when they dominated the Packers. They looked really good. Like that was a Super Bowl caliber team. And then they show up on Thursday night against the Giants and nearly get beat. So it's like, okay, where are we going here? But I think overall, the defense they have, and if Tom Brady can keep it up, which looks like he's going to for the most part, they're really, honestly, a Super Bowl caliber ball club. But I'll say realistically, right now, I think the farthest they could get at this moment would be an NFC Championship game. So that gives you, a couple more games past the postseason. Maybe that's asking too much of them. I don't know. But, yeah, I'm going to say right now to answer your question, NFC Championship.
So it's safe to say they'll play at least 10 games.
10 games, yeah.
And so scrolling through the rest of this schedule, they got a bye week between the Kansas City game and the Minnesota game.
Yeah.
So that's 11 weeks. I find it very, very, very hard to believe that Antonio Brown can go 11 weeks without doing something crazy. I'm selling this as fast as you're trying to sell it to me. There's no way. There's just with what we've seen from Antonio Brown over the past couple of years, going back to his time in Oakland with burning his feet, in the cryo tanks, and then the helmet debacle, and oh my God, and then he's got the whole social disturbance there in the street with the police officers. There's no way that you could confidently tell me that Antonio Brown's going to go at least 11 weeks without causing some kind of disturbance. I'm selling.
Okay, and I respect that. I think that might be the safe way to go. The reason I am buying, and I said this earlier this year a little bit, a few weeks ago, is because it's Tom Brady. I think he's the X factor here because of the rapport they had when he was with New England one game last year. You could tell it was pretty cohesive there. Tom Brady ends up letting him into his mansion. He's basically taking care of him. He's playing daddy to Antonio Brown here when he needed it most. And I think that's kind of where you're seeing them again. Because Antonio Brown, he respects the hell out of Tom Brady, and I think it's vice versa. Tom Brady was ticked off when the Pats said they were getting rid of him, even with those allegations he was facing. He was not happy about it. So their rapport is really good, and I think Brady. First of all, he was the reason he even came to the Bucs. Whenever Bruce Arians came out and was like, "Nah, Tom Brady had nothing to do with it. That's a complete lie." He was the whole reason that Antonio Brown found his way back into Tampa Bay here with Tom Brady. So with that being said, I think there's enough incentive that Brady is pushing, like, dude, look, you're back with me. Okay, you're back with a really talented offense. Oh, by the way, our defense is playing lights out, which nobody really expected that. We're in a really good position in the NFC right now, and we could win a championship, and we could, before it's all said and done, because Tom Brady, he's not planning on retiring anytime soon. With Tom Brady still being out there, he's saying, hey, you and I could run the table for a couple of years here, man. A few years. Let's get it going. And so I think all that put in there is just enough to keep Antonio Brown on the straight and narrow. I would not be surprised, though, if he hops on Twitter and there's just something that pops up and he mouths about it, or he might mouth Bruce Arians once in a while. But if you can kind of keep the minor disturbances there and at bay a little bit, it's just going to be enough, I think, to squeak him by. But I'm with you, Zach. He is completely mentally unstable. He's got some big time problems upstairs.
Well, I think what you said was really important. He was only with Tom Brady for 1 week, for one game last year. I get that the respect factor is there, but we don't know what would have happened beyond that one game. There's no. I get that New England is a real strict environment, and Belichick's a no nonsense guy, but he's going to be down there in Florida.
Right.
He's going to be in the nice weather. I get that I feel like Tom Brady can only do so much before some. And I'm not saying that Antonio Brown's going to go out and, get arrested or have a meltdown on the sidelines or in the locker room or, anything like that, but there's gonna be some kind of disturbance with him that causes some kind of distraction.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if we're on here at some point talking about it too.
Absolutely. So
yeah.
my last one is right up your alley. Kansas City puts up over 500 yards total offense on the Carolina team.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to sell this one, believe it or not, because Carolina, they came in with a really, really bad defense this year. And, last year they were terrible, and they had not a bunch of improvements on that side of the ball, and they've been overachieving for the most part with Matt Rule at the helm at head coach, and they've done a pretty good job overall this season defensively. However, the last few games we've seen them kind of regress a bit, and against some teams that honestly are not all that great offensively. So I think Kansas City has a big game. I'm not saying that's going to be a really close ball game here. The Chiefs should put up a lot of points. But with that being said, I'm seeing more of a 350 passing yard game from Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. And I'd be surprised still because the backfield right now for Kansas City is really talented, but man, it's a mess. They brought in Le'Veon Bell, and they don't know where to put him right now. It's a weird fit. They're taking stuff away from Clyde, and to me, he should still be the main guy, and he's not getting as many carries. It's significantly reduced on that side. So I'm going to say they put up more just over the 400-yard range. I think 500 is a stretch, but if they did, you're looking at more of a game like Patrick Mahomes had last week where he wasn't even trying, and he put up huge numbers. So it's absolutely certainly possible, but I'm going to sell it and go more around the 400 total yard range.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it. You look at what he did last week, like you said, 416 yards, put up 5 touchdowns, was just lights out. I mean, if he puts up over 400 yards, that obviously is going to open up that running game, and I think it should be easy for them to get at least 100 yards on the ground. So okay. I'm gonna buy it.
Okay, I like that. You're not going to get any complaints from me about that, no doubt. We come back here on the afternoon sports drive. Ryan Clark from the Manhattan Mercury is going to join us and talk about Kansas State, Oklahoma State. That's next. Welcome back to the afternoon sports drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster here on this Thursday afternoon. Ryan Black for the Manhattan Mercury joining us. We appreciate you taking some time out here. And Kansas State, they've been an interesting team, obviously, coming into this year. But before we dive into more of what they've been able to accomplish and not accomplish this season, coming into this season with COVID and all that nonsense going on in the offseason with teams, I mean, what were your expectations for Kansas State coming into this season?
I would tell you that I kind of felt like, and maybe this sounds like a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I felt like K-State could really go either way, meaning that they could either really surprise people, which seems like they usually end up doing, right? There's a reason they seem to get picked 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, seemingly every year, and then end up usually outperforming expectations. And I thought that because of the fact that, hey, they brought back one of the most experienced players, not just in the conference, but in the country, in Skylar Thompson. Now, of course, he's gone for the season, so, I mean, that kind of cancels out. But the reason I thought, maybe they will, underachieve, relative to what they wanted to do this year is because, they lost a lot from last year's team, especially on the offensive line. I mean, they literally were replacing all 5 starters. You throw in the fact they lost their top rushers from last year in Jordan Brown and James Gilbert. They lost their kind of most consistent receiver in Dalton Schoen. They lost multiple guys up front on defense with Trey Deshawn and Jordan Mitty, as well as Reggie Walker. I mean, they were replacing a lot from last year's team, which certainly far exceeded expectations in terms of they were preseason picked 9th to finish ahead of only KU, and they ended up in that however many was 4-way tie for second, in the conference, for third, my apologies, in the conference last year. And so, the fact that they were, that they're 4-2 through 6 games, I would tell you that pretty much anyone who considers himself a K-State fan would take that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a tale of 2 different Kansas State teams, I think, this year, too, because we obviously, I mean, you open the season, they lose to Arkansas State, and everyone's like, okay, I didn't see that one coming, and then, 4 wins, and including taking down Oklahoma, right? So it's kind of been that tale of 2 teams with Kansas State.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that certainly after they lose to Arkansas State, I personally would not have believed that they would be 4-2 through this point, because I guess it's like it is one of those things where again you assume that hey, if they can't even beat Arkansas State, a Sun Belt team, how in the world are they going to beat Oklahoma or Texas Tech or West Virginia, right? But the fact that they immediately rebounded and had that just amazing come from behind win at Oklahoma, where they overcame a 21 point deficit 2 different times in that game. I think really set this team on a positive path. And I think the even more personally to me impressive thing is the fact that now these last few games they've done it without Skylar Thompson. He got hurt in the first half of the game against Texas Tech, and we come to find out like following week that now he's gone for the season.
Mm-hmm.
And Will Howard, a true freshman, has stepped in and played overall I'd say fairly well. Certainly a lot. I mean, I think well for a player who was not expected to have to play this season. You have a 5th-year senior in Skylar Thompson. Knock on wood, outside of injuries, you expect that he's going to be the guy that they count on. But the thing about Will Howard is we're going to see how resilient he is now this weekend, because he's coming off his first game where he was not rock solid. He threw 3 interceptions against West Virginia, one of which was a return for a touchdown, and K-State just got blasted last week, 37-10. So, we're going to see what this kid's made of come Saturday.
Ryan Black joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive from the Manhattan Mercury on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. And yeah, you've mentioned there with Will Howard, and when you guys knew that he was going to step in at quarterback, be completely honest with me here. How confident were you that, okay, this K-State team, even with him at the helm, can still really compete in the Big 12?
Well, I'll tell you that the first game without him, I picked TCU to win. So I guess I should probably give you your answer, right? I mean, I just felt like, hey, they probably would still, beat KU, because, I mean, that's almost a given, right? And I thought, okay, they probably win, 2 more games. Maybe they'd win a game people don't expect, and then they probably would beat Baylor. But like I said, outside of that, no, I don't. And here's the thing: I just don't think that given that this time last year, this kid's still playing high school football in Pennsylvania, I don't think it anybody outside of him, and of course that whole cliche about the guys in this locker room. I don't think anybody really reasonably expected that that he would have been undefeated as a starter heading into last week's game against West Virginia, and that and that defense just is so good. They did make him look like a true freshman last week.
Hey Ryan, Zach Lancaster here, co-host. We've seen what Will Clark can do, Will Howard can do over the past few weeks. He gets thrust into a situation against Texas Tech. They find a way to win. Kansas State finds a way to win against TCU, and like you said, Kansas is a given year in and year out. But then you see what they did against a really good defense in West Virginia. You look at this Oklahoma State defense, and this OSU defense has been really good all year long. I think the biggest question was, well, what's this defense going to do when they get tested, when they go up against an Iowa State or they go up against a Texas? And they held a really good Iowa State team to 21 points. I understand that Texas scored 41 points, but a lot of those were off of turnovers. You had the 100-yard kickoff return. Oklahoma State held Texas to under 300 yards total offense, and I think it was 13 first downs. How confident are you that Howard is going to be able to do something to be able to move the ball against Oklahoma State on Saturday?
Not supremely confident, mainly because today, earlier before this interview, we spoke with offensive coordinator Courtney Messingham, and he did not seem too confident that Briley Moore is going to play Saturday. He said that Moore would be a game time decision. We know Moore got hurt in the second quarter of last week's loss, and he's K-State's kind of stellar tight end. He's been their leader in touchdown catches. He's also their leader in receptions this year, and he's just been kind of the guy who, when K-State gets down the red zone, he's the guy they look for. So then, if you take him out of the equation, that's one less dependable option that Howard has. And with Moore gone for the second half of last week's game, it made it even tougher on true freshman Deuce Vaughn, who West Virginia also shut down. So I just feel like the fact that K-State has not really been able to consistently string together drives and really develop any playmakers outside of Deuce Moore and Briley Moore and Deuce Vaughn, I just think that it's going to be extremely, extremely tough for this offense Saturday, and I really think that K-State's only legitimate shot to win is if they do what they did against TCU and what they did against KU, which is making plays on special teams and maybe returning a pass for a touchdown. Because I just don't think right now this offense has shown that they can do what they need to do to dominate time possession and keep other teams' offenses off the field.
Yeah, you lead me right into my next question. Kansas State historically has been really, really good with special teams, and as we all know at this point, the two special team gaffes that Oklahoma State had last week against Texas, the roughing the kicker, and then obviously the 100-yard kickoff return, those really came back to bite Oklahoma State in the butt. What can Kansas State do special teams wide to try to make an impact on the game? Because as you mentioned, the offense is going to struggle. So how big of an impact can special teams have if Kansas State can get something going?
I mean, I think again that's one of the keys to a potential K-State upset is they've got to make plays on special teams. I think everyone kind of knows now about what Phillip Brooks did against KU, returning two punts for touchdowns, and also just having multiple 40-yard returns, which he's had a K-State single game record for punt return yardage in that lopsided 55-14 win. But I think the other thing, which in a way has been kind of forgotten because he did so little before he decided to transfer, is K-State lost an All-American kick returner in Joshua Youngblood, who just decided in the middle of the year that, hey, I'm going to enter the transfer portal and I'm done. But last week Malik Knowles, who last year returned a kickoff against Mississippi State for a touchdown, he had a 46-yard return on a kickoff. So, K-State has talent, in the special teams, even having lost an All-American guy like Youngblood. But I just think the fact that, Knowles has not been as consistently good and consistently excellent as what Youngblood was last year. So I just really think that if they can't get Oklahoma State to punt the ball, it's I just don't know how much else they're going to be able to do on special teams.
Ryan Black joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. And more on, Ryan, I want to get your opinion on what you think the defensive focus is going to be overall for Kansas State, because we saw what Texas did against the Cowboys when really it was, okay, we're going to load up the box a bit, put an extra guy in there and bottle up Chuba Hubbard. And unfortunately, that's going to leave one guy on Tylan Wallace, but we'll take our chances with him. So do you see K-State trying to adopt a little bit more of that?
Yes. Yeah, mainly because I just think that so many of the players who are still on this team from last year remember the fact that he ran for 296 yards. Yeah. And I think they're just going to go into it with maybe we're going to get beaten this game, but we're not going to let Hubbard run all over us like he did last year, and that's partially a pride thing, but I think it's also, like you said, just alluding to the fact that that's kind of what Texas decided to do. And K-State has a lot of confidence, in their cornerbacks. Justin Gardner and Echo Boydo. I mean, they've had some players who played really well at corner this year, I just think they're, like you said, they're going to be willing to maybe take their chances one-on-one with Wallace. Now, is that playing with fire? Yes, certainly it is. But I just think that it completely based off last year, they are going to load the box and just say we're not going to let Hubbard have another crazy game.
Last thing for you here real quick, but you mentioned Deuce Vaughn and the rushing attack, and even at this point in the season, is it still, and maybe, with Will Howard now at quarterback, is it still more of an emphasis, you think, for Kansas State to really try and get their own run game working here a little bit?
Oh, yes, and that's what, the coaching staff would tell you, even if even in just regular kind of games, their focus always, just this coaching staff's focus is always to establish the run. That they are a run to set up the pass kind of team. So I think it certainly takes on an added importance given the fact that you've got a guy in Howard who's only going to be making his seventh career appearance as a college player, and so I think you always want to try to take pressure off him where you can. But like I said, that's not going to change. K-State's game plan week to week is always to establish the run. That's just something that this that the philosophy that this coaching staff brought from North Dakota State, that they certainly, did very well last year, and this year they're kind of struggling a little more to this point to find that. But hey, there's still 4 games left in the regular season. We're going to see if maybe it comes together here in the final quarter and closing stretch.
Yeah, no doubt. That's Ryan Black from the Manhattan Mercury. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan A. Black. Ryan, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day and joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. We appreciate it. Have a good one, man.
Yes, sir. Hey, thanks for having me on.
All right, Ryan Black, everybody. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Ryan A. Black. Appreciate his time. And when we come back here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, we're going to round it out and tell you what we've learned. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster, we're back after this. Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster rounding out the show today here on this Thursday. And we're going to get into our final segment here to go ahead and send everybody off. Here we go.
The day is coming to an end. Time to find out if these two got any smarter.
The question is, what did you learn?
Let's find out what the guys learned today on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Well, I learned something today.
Just like Peter Griffin, as you learned something today. Zach, what'd you learn today?
I learned that it is very, very difficult to do a radio show with 100-degree fever.
What a trooper, man.
But it's nothing in comparison to what Chad Whitener dealt with last month. We've got an article up right now on PokesReport.com. Robert talked to the former Oklahoma State linebacker yesterday. Chad staying the night at his parents' house back in early October. They're going to go pick up some elk meat that they had shot. He walks into his parents' house around 10 o'clock that night to his parents zip-tied in the office, 2 armed intruders, one with a 9mm, one with an AK-47, and they zip-tie Chad, put him in the office. They're screaming, where's the money, where are the safes? They're trying to figure everything out. And Chad Whitener decided that if he was going to die that night, he wasn't going to do it lying down, breaks his zip ties, has his dad break his zip ties, and closes the door. One of the intruders breaks the door in. Chad hits the guy with a chair, chases him through the house. He gets shot in the stomach. Bullet goes through his stomach, lodges in his arm, breaks his arm. His dad's able to pick up a gun and return fire. The guys leave out the back of the house and disappear into the night. But Chad Whitener, my goodness, that is one of the most insane stories I've heard in a long time. Really, really thankful that he is okay. And what's crazy is he was saying, that movie Major Payne,
yeah.
The guy gets shot and he breaks his finger and he immediately forgets about being shot. He said that's what it was like. He said he didn't even know he got shot in the stomach because the bullet went through and lodged into his arm and broke his arm. So he said, if you ever get shot, break your finger because you won't even think about being shot.
Adrenaline's a crazy thing, man. That is wild. A really wild story. I heard whenever he recounted that with Robert the other day, man, it's just really unbelievable. You never know what situation you're going to find himself in, but truly a hero indeed for Chad, no doubt. Fantastic story. Yeah, like you said, available to go read there. I learned today Logan Ryan is the guy that I'm talking about. Not Ryan Clark, man. I feel like I don't even know what that is about. And why is he thankful that he's with the Giants? Because it's not necessarily that he's with the team, that what they do on the field, but because he believes that the athletic trainer, one of the athletic trainers on that team, saved his wife's life the other day. He came in on Wednesday night and kind of told everyone what happened. Said, he's leaving the stadium and his wife calls him. She's pregnant. Calls him and says, "Hey, I'm having some really bad stomach pains, extreme stomach pains." And Logan told her, "Well, just try to sleep it off. We'll see how you feel in the morning." She kind of agreed. That's probably what she would attempt to do. And I guess he told the athletic trainer what she said, and he told her no, she needs to go to the emergency room this moment. So they ultimately decided to do that, and luckily for them, they did, because they found out that she had an ectopic pregnancy, which basically what that is it's when the embryo attaches outside of the uterus. So she had a ton of internal bleeding going on. The sad news is that they ultimately lost the baby, but it saved Ashley's life. So it was pretty unbelievable. All it took was that trainer to make sure that they were like, no, you need to go to the emergency room. And Logan Ryan is just thankful that that was the advice. And, he also got later word from Joe Judge, his coach, that basically told him, hey, don't worry about football right now. Go and take care of your wife. She's in Florida, so don't worry about football at this moment. Go do your business with your family. So pretty incredible story. All it takes is one guy to step up and say, no. There's a lot of times where just like, Zachy experienced mild things like that and think, I don't need, help or whatever. I'll be able to get through it. And no, I mean, it can be a lot more serious. So thankful that Logan Ryan was able to have that trainer on his side, no doubt.
No, absolutely. And what's crazy is that trainer could have just heard that information 15 years ago. And it's one little thing that just stuck in his head saying, hey, that sounds familiar. She needs to go to the hospital.
Yeah, and that's all it took, man. So It's a really crazy story, but thankfully she's okay. And thankfully Chad's okay. Two crazy stories there to end up the Afternoon Sports Drive. You never know what you're going to get on the Afternoon Sports Drive, man. A lot of good stuff. That's Zach Lancaster. I'm Patrick Wheeler. We'll be back tomorrow to round out the week. Levi Peckinpah will join us tomorrow, and we'll get you into your weekend with all you need to know about Oklahoma State and Kansas State. We'll give you your Week 9 NFL preview as well. Don't forget Thursday Night Football, Packers-Niners coming up in just a little bit. Until then, everybody have a fantastic rest of your Thursdays. We're back here, and we'll see you back here tomorrow on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.